All right, let's come back to the Sex Discrimination Commissioner. I'm joined by Liberal Senator Leah Blyth. Leah, thanks for coming on the program. I watched your interrogation of Dr. Anna Cody with fascination and was shocked, frankly appalled at her inability to simply state what a man or a woman is. Should I have been surprised?
It was really quite extraordinary, and I think what we've seen from our Sex Discrimination Commissioner is she's far more of an activist than a pragmatist. And while I was hoping that the answers would differ to what I got, and I was hoping to be surprised by them, unfortunately what she did was deliver exactly what she has been doing. And surprisingly, I mean, the Sex Discrimination Act doesn't define a man and a woman because Parliament didn't feel the need. It needed to spell out the obvious. But what we're finding is taxpayer-funded activists will always find a way to work against hardworking Australians. She collects a $400,000 salary from the taxpayer, and she's proven that she's willing to throw all women under the bus for men, which is completely contrary to what her remit is.
I noticed that you continually tried to tease out her personal view, and she continually hid behind the Act and said, well, the Act says, and she was very hesitant to give her personal view. Is that good enough for somebody in that role?
I don't think it is, and even the way she's hiding behind the Act, that is her interpretation of the Act. And what we're seeing in the Tickle v Giggle case is her interpretation is now being tested, and there's an appeal before the Federal Appeals Court, and it will be very interesting to see what their findings are because, as I said, the Sex Discrimination Act doesn't say that the rights of men should come before the rights of women. It actually is silent on those definitions. So the definitions are, what she is interpreting them to be, which I don't think is good enough. I think it does go to what her personal views are rather than what the intention of the legislation was. And, her own submissions to that case demonstrated, as I said earlier, she's willing to throw all women under the bus and will let a man's, perceived rights trump those of women. And to me, that is just completely irresponsible and divisive.
So let me ask you this. Why aren't women across the country outraged by this? I mean, I've just had a go at her and obviously you were pretty unimpressed, but why isn't there outrage across the country that someone in this position, charged with protecting the rights of women, refuses to or can't say what a woman is? Why is it that it seems such a small group of people are concerned about this?
It is really interesting, and I think there is certainly a growing unrest as people are realising what the interpretation of the legislation actually means. I think for a long time it was very much, I guess we hadn't tested it when we have trans rights and women's rights and they intersect with each other, which one will come out on top. And really Tickle v Giggle is one of the first cases that we've had in Australia that has tested that. And I think people are now aware of what that interpretation means and how the legislation is actually playing out in people's lives. I mean, we're seeing in my own home state of South Australia, we've got men being housed with women in a women's prison, and there are women who have claimed that they've been sexually assaulted. So this is a Sex Discrimination Commissioner who has been charged with, protecting women, and her interpretation of the Act is providing the ambiguity required that men are actually able to now go into women's spaces and threaten their safety.
So I've got to ask you about the Labor senator who was chairing the committee. It's not just that you had Dr. Anna Cody betraying women, but then you had the female chair, the Labor Senator, Yana Stewart, jump in to accuse you of verballing the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, which I don't think you were, and essentially to try to get her off the hook. What did you make of that?
I think it is a demonstration of this Labor government, and they don't want their own activism and ideologies to be tested. They are a government that has proven that they're not interested in transparency. It's a government who has their own agenda, and unfortunately, they are incredibly disciplined when it comes to enforcing that. So I wasn't surprised by the interjection of the chair. It is disappointing because I think when you've got a taxpayer-funded sex discrimination commissioner who isn't able to tell you the difference between a man and a woman because she's not a medical expert, so apparently we now have to be medical experts to be able to tell the difference. I almost find it, if it wasn't real, you'd think it was a script from a sitcom. So disappointing, but not surprising.
What was amazing to me, and I said it at the top of the show, she gave the same answer back in October. I can't believe she didn't understand this question would be asked again at this estimates hearing. And I'm sure at the next estimates hearing, you or someone else will ask again. And the good news for me is the editorials just write themselves. Leah Blyth, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.